Today what we're going to do is we're going to show you in our shop what we have or the tools we have available for you to use to get rid of unwanted marks. Well, what is an unwanted mark? Relief cuts from the bandsaw, there's scratches, there's dirt that gets on your project from various things, there's pencil marks, there's all kinds of those unwanted marks that you don't want on your project. Things look natural, then there's things that don't look natural, and those are the things that we want to get off our projects. We're going to start out right here. These are the tools that we're going to go over today. We have all kinds of different things, electric tools, hand tools, files, file cards, and lots of different things that we're going to go over. This is called the belt sander, and we went over this in our belt sander safety. Here's a project that's one of our projects, is one of our pieces. If we take a look right here, this will not work right there, will it? Can it work right here? Yes, and this is why you need to know all of these tools to help you be successful in getting those unwanted marks out of your projects. This works perfect for like this. Recognize this? Those you in 7th grade, remember we made lamps? This project is pretty much worthless. This project will not do anything that we need it to do. This, as an example, all right, can do a few things, but here is the one that does work on the disc sander. You can go right here and work this edge. Of course, I'm standing to the side, but I would be right in front of the camera if I was standing right here. This is where you need to be standing. Now, on this rotation, as a reminder, and I'll keep reminding this, you divide this right in half. This rotates this way, clockwise. So when it's rotating, the problem is, if you sand over here, what's going to happen? It's going to pick your board up and throw it. Those are the things that you want to avoid. All right? Be very, very careful. Only on the downward or the left side that you sand on. Now, as an example, we turn on, and we go round the corner. Round the corners on there. This will make nice round. Now you gotta be careful. Remember, this sandpaper is 50 grit sandpaper. You touch your knuckle on that, your knuckle's gonna be sanded off, not cut. And trust me, it hurts. You gotta be very, very careful when you're doing that. So this project, we start here generally, but what this does is puts in deep grooves in your project because that sand is so big, it's 50 grit. It puts in deep grooves. Well, what about our areas like this? How do we sand those? Using the electric sander, we come over here to the drum sander. Now I'm standing off to the side again. If I was standing up front, which I should be right here, I would be in the way. So we turn it on. This is called an oscillating drum sander because it goes up and down and round and round. Then we just go in here and we can work this and get everything round. Now, even in these corners, a little hint, 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 when you round edges on future projects, to get rid of those deep grooves, you can come over here and just work those, and you can get those unwanted marks out. Now, you gotta be careful. These sanders will burn your wood too, so instead of doing a positive thing, they will do a negative thing for you. Now, be careful on these. These sanders are so safe to use. You've been using them since 6th grade. If you were at Everest, you've been using them that long, but things, you gotta be careful. Just watch what you're doing on that. Now we're gonna go up and show you the palm sanders and stuff. here's where you start. You always start with those machines. Those machines take off the most wood, they take off the quickest amount of wood, they do the quickest amount of work for you. But it reaches a point where you can only use those so far, so now you need to switch to more of the hand tools. First one we're going to do is called a palm sander. These palm sanders are really nice tools. You remember when 6th and 7th grade, how did you do all your sanding? You did all your sanding by hand. And here we get to use a power tool. This is a palm sander. Now let me show you, don't be afraid of this. I can put my hand on it and all it does is vibrate my hand a little bit. So don't be afraid of the palm sander. But now we need to look at the palm sander for one thing. Look, the sandpaper on here, is this wrecked? Yes it is, it's got a big tear in it, doesn't it? So what you're gonna do is the teacher will give you some sandpaper for that, and we need to change that out. When we go to use a palm sander, there's bars right here. We pick this bar up, and then there's one on the other side too, we pick up. Now, my little trick to doing this is you could go like this and change the sandpaper up. One trick I have is, of course I want to unplug it first. I like to push my body weight against the sander, move the bar up, pull the sandpaper off, and put a new piece on. Now, to put a new piece on, let's talk a little bit about sandpaper. For in our shop, we have 120 grit, 120, we have 80 grit, and we have 220 grit. Those will be our three choices of sandpaper that we'll work with. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab the 80 grit. We're going to put it in because we always start with rough sandpaper first. We put it in this slot right here. Just put it in there. Take that bar, lock it down. Now, if we notice, it's locked here, but now I got to put it in the back slot. So I'm going to pull the old stuff out. This is garbage. I'm going to turn it around. Remember how I like to use my body to push on it. Make a little fold in it. Make a little fold. It'll just make it easier. Slide it right in the slot. And we lock it down. And there it is. That's how easy it is to change sandpaper on a palm sander. Now this is called an orbital sander. These are actually for larger boards, larger faces. Remember we learned parts of the board? Larger faces. So this one, we have a larger orbital sander too. You can see the size difference of the paper. This one, we're just going to move the clip, hook it in, all right, hook it in, turn it around, make the little fold again, and put it in. Now, sandpaper has changed. That's how easy it is to change the sandpaper in a palm sander or orbital sander. Now we're going to plug them in and we're going to sand a board. Now, a couple little tricks is sanding the board. We could sand our board right here and we can chase it around the table. That's no fun, or we got to hang on to it and everything else. But in the cabinets right here, these are router mats and sanding mats. So in the cabinet, we're going to pull out a mat. Make sure the table is clear of dust. We're going to put the mat down. Now we can put our board on top, and what does that do? It grabs my board, doesn't it? It'll hold it secure. So now the on and off switch for the palm sanders are right up front. Now before I turn it on, they do get a little bit loud. Now this is how you grab it. Do I want to push really hard on it? No. Do I want to apply some pressure? Yes. That'll come with experience, all right? If you hear the machine bogging down, you're pushing too hard. If you just let it sit on top, it's going to take you 10 times longer to sand. So as we go to use a palm sander, it comes with experience. And if you have troubles trying to figure it and problem solve that out, just ask the teacher. We'll come over and help you out with that. So now I'm going to turn it on. And we can sand that really nicely. Now we can also sand what? Remember, if the sander touches us, is it going to hurt? No. The sander will not hurt you, so don't be afraid of that. It's not going to hurt you. Now, this little tiny project, probably the palm sander would work a lot easier. This is the orbital sander. They're quiet. They're quiet and they work a lot nicer, give you more efficiency. It's heavy, so you don't have to push down. That will have all the weight that you need. So now we talked about using the belt sander, the disc sander, the drum sander to get a lot of marks off. We showed you how to use a palm sander, showed you how to use an orbital sander on your projects. But let's not forget about a couple things. When we go, there's certain times, certain places where a file works the best. Don't give up on the file. Some of you think, well, this is old school. Well, files have been around for a long time and they still continue to be around because they are so efficient at what they do. So when we use a file, if you just stand here like this, it's not going to work. So what we want to do is apply enough pressure, go across the face, and use the file. Don't be afraid to use the file because they do work very, very well. Now the file will have a tendency to have buildup of sawdust in it. This is called a file card. I didn't come up with a name. To me it looks like a file brush, but it's called a card. It has wire on the inside and a brush on the outside. Keep the file clean. It'll file so much easier for you. Sometimes a file is a lot easier to use than an electric hand tool. Now, don't also forget about, we find right here, we have sanding blocks. We have, this is all full of scrap sandpaper. Sometimes a good old-fashioned hand sanding does the trick to get those unwanted marks. Now, this is probably one of the most important steps you can do with your project is get those unwanted marks off your project. Take the time, make sure you use your time wisely, get those marks out because you're gonna go from here to the finishing room. So make sure you sand correctly. Nothing worse in my eyes than seeing a project that has a bunch of unwanted marks on it because somebody was in too big of a hurry to spend the time to get rid of them. If you have any questions on that or question whether you got all the marks out, ask your teacher.